Welcome to The Explainer. So we're diving into something pretty chilling today. How do you stop a simple mistake, a miscalculation between warships in the crowded Taiwan Strait from blowing up into a full-blown global crisis? We're going to look back at a really close call from 1996 to get a handle on the risks today, and then we'll dig into a practical solution that just might keep the peace.
Okay, so let's start by rewinding the clock to 1995. Now this timeline, this isn't just a list of dates. This is basically the anatomy of a crisis that took the entire region right to the brink of war. It all kicked off with missile tests, which then triggered the largest show of American military might in Asia since the Vietnam War. And it all came to a head right in the middle of Taiwan's very first democratic presidential election.
So yeah, this was way more than just a close call. We're talking about a high-stakes geopolitical chess match being played with live ammunition. And the goal was crystal clear. Use raw military intimidation to try and directly shape the outcome of a democratic election.
So what kicked off this whole massive military escalation? You're not going to believe it. A university speech. Seriously, when President Lee Teng-hui, who was a Cornell alum, got invited to speak in the U.S., Beijing didn't see it as just some academic visit. No, they saw it as a political move, an attempt to split the motherland, and they decided the response had to be one of force.
Okay, so you can really see the intimidation strategy evolving right here. Phase 1, that was basically a warning shot. But Phase 2, in March of '96, that was way more direct. Missiles landed just off Taiwan's two biggest commercial ports, Keelung and Kaohsiung. That disrupted over 70% of all commercial shipping. This was a direct attempt to basically choke off the arteries of Taiwan's economy.
But here's where it gets really interesting. The huge miscalculation. The whole point was to scare voters away from President Lee. And the result? The absolute opposite happened. The missile tests actually gave him a bump in the polls of about 5%, which helped him cruise to a decisive victory. The intimidation tactic? It just backfired. Spectacular.
All right, let's fast forward to today. Because even though that crisis is over, the dangers that were bubbling under the surface, well, they haven't gone away. In fact, they've gotten way more complicated and a whole lot more immediate.
This quote from strategist Yamamoto Katsuya, man, it just paints such a vivid picture of the new reality. You got to forget this idea of a huge, empty ocean. The Taiwan Strait and all the waters around it are a tight, crowded, and confined space where the world's most powerful militaries are operating literally shoulder to shoulder 24/7.
And that brings us right to the heart of the problem today. In a space this packed, this tense, where one tiny misjudgment could lead to a collision, or, God forbid, an accidental shot being fired, there is a dangerous, deafening silence. The risk of something spiraling out of control by accident is just immense.
So why isn't there a simple hotline? I mean, you'd think preventing an accidental war would be priority number one, right? Well, this is where a decades-old political paradox gets right in the way. Let's take a look at Japan's policy, for example. It's really a masterclass in diplomatic wording. Japan doesn't actually endorse Beijing's One China principle. Instead, it says it understands and respects that position, but, and this is the absolute key, only as long as the whole issue is sorted out peacefully. It's like a policy with a built-in emergency exit if things get coerced. And this right here, this is the paradox in a nutshell. On paper, because of these policies, Taiwan's military doesn't officially exist in a diplomatic sense. But in the real world, their destroyers and fighter jets are right there, operating in the exact same congested space as everybody else. You just can't set up a hotline with a military that your foreign policy is pretending isn't even there.
Okay, so how on earth do you solve a problem that seems impossible? Well, strategist Yamamoto Katsuya has a proposal, and it's all about sidestepping the politics and just focusing on being practical and safe.
It really comes down to a super practical two-step idea. First, just acknowledge what's actually happening on the ground. Treat Taiwan's military as a military entity, just for communication purposes. This has nothing to do with sovereignty, it's all about safety. And second, once you do that, you can finally build the communication channels you need to stop accidents before they happen. And what's being proposed isn't just, a couple of red phones. It's this whole web-like system that connects absolutely everyone. And check this out. It includes the Coast Guards. That is such a critical detail. Because in a place like this, a crisis is just as likely to kick off between law enforcement ships as it is between full-blown naval warships. So this all leads to a really important question. Why is this such a big deal for Japan specifically? I mean,
This isn't some far-off problem for Tokyo, it's happening right on their doorstep.
Just 100 kilometers. That's it. That's how close Japan's southernmost island is to Taiwan. We're talking on a good day, you can literally see the mountains of Taiwan from Japanese territory. Their military spaces are bound to overlap. It's unavoidable.
And that proximity has led to this phrase that's become a cornerstone of Japanese defense thinking. A Taiwan contingency is a Japan contingency. And there's a very real, very concrete reason for that. It's not just about being close neighbors, it's about treaty obligations.
Okay, so here's how it all connects. The security treaty between Japan and the US lets American forces use their bases in Japan to deal with a crisis in Taiwan. So, think about it. If a conflict kicks off and China attacks those US bases, well, that's an attack on Japan itself. Japan gets pulled in, automatically.
And that really leaves us with the big fundamental question for the future of peace in Asia. I mean, everybody agrees that an accidental war would be an absolute catastrophe. The solution is right there, and it's a practical one, not a political one. But can these nations actually set aside the politics long enough to make it happen? The answer to that question? Well, it's going to shape the stability of the entire region.